Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. Today, a surprise announcement from the White House affecting troops overseas, and an update about the government shutdown deadline. Plus, new research about Saturn's rings, and Pinterest has a new plan for 2019. Those stories and many more in less than 10 minutes. Then hang out after the news for Thing to Know Thursday. This week, we're talking about the good news of 2018, giving you all the inspiration as we head into the holidays. I'm Erica Mandy. Today is Thursday, December 20th. You ready? Let's do this. A surprise announcement from the White House. President Trump says, We won the war on ISIS, and it's time to bring troops home from Syria. Reuters reports there are about 2,000 U.S. ground troops in Syria right now, and pulling them out completely could happen in the coming months. The Pentagon is saying it started the process of returning U.S. troops from Syria, but it'll keep working to defeat ISIS from wherever. So what are other people saying about it? Well, many of Trump's fellow Republicans, along with many Democrats, are against this call, saying it's a national security mistake to leave, that it would strengthen Russia and Iran, and leave allies in Syria vulnerable to an attack by Turkey. Some Democrats wondered if this was more about Trump's own interests and dealings with other countries. But the Wall Street Journal did say a few lawmakers from both parties support the move, saying the U.S. has gone too far in Syria already, and yes, it's time to bring troops home. All right, time for an update on the possible government shutdown. It looks like it may not happen after all, at least not this month. Well, that is if the House approves a short-term spending bill today, and the president signs it before midnight tomorrow. Already, NBC News reports the Senate gave it the thumbs up last night. That short-term spending bill essentially keeps the government funded until February, when we'll likely do this dance again. Remember, President Trump had pushed hard for $5 billion in funding for a border wall, and he said he'd be okay with a shutdown if he had to be. But it seems now he's backed off, even if he's not so happy about it. Fox News reports he's taking heat from his supporters who really wanted that border wall. For now, the deadline is midnight Friday. Stay tuned. As expected, the Federal Reserve raised the key interest rate by a quarter point, the fourth increase in 2018. So what does that really mean when rates go up? Well, savers will earn more interest on the money in the bank, but it's not as great for borrowers. It means higher borrowing costs for things like cars, home mortgages, and credit cards. CNBC reports the Fed cited a strong labor market as one factor and said it will hike rates again in 2019. But it also lowered the prediction for how many times rates will likely go up next year. Instead of 3, it says rates will likely go up twice in the new year. Well, Facebook may have shared your data with even more people than you thought. The New York Times reports Facebook gave other major tech companies a lot of access to users' personal data, at least in the past. Think Spotify, Netflix, Amazon, and about 150 other companies. The report says Facebook let the companies do everything from read private messages to get names and contact info through friends without ever letting users know about it. Business Insider reports Facebook admits the access was there, but is defending it, saying other apps needed it to do things like use the messaging feature. And Facebook says there's no evidence any company abused that access. At the same time, Facebook is dealing with some legal trouble. It's now facing its first U.S. lawsuit for that whole Cambridge Analytica scandal earlier this year. Washington, D.C.'s Attorney General filed the suit and says Facebook violated rules when it shared data and didn't tell users. Scientists say we're lucky to be around to see Saturn's rings because they won't be here forever. A new NASA study found the rings are being pulled into the planet by gravity. The rings are made of mostly ice and rock that range in size from just a grain of sand to boulders the size of a house. Apparently, Saturn did not have those iconic rings when it formed 4 billion years ago. They were likely born 100 million years ago. But now they're fading. Still, don't worry, the entire ring system won't be completely gone for another 100 to 300 million more years. So if you find yourself most interested in the tech news we talk about every day, then you will love today's sponsor, the Techmeme Ride Home podcast. It gives you even more on the day's tech news, all in less than 20 minutes each weekday. In fact, some of you may have already heard of Techmeme.com. Industry leaders have told publications like The New Yorker that it's the tech news source they follow. And now you can listen on the go with the podcast. Techmeme Ride Home is a daily 20-minute tech news roundup with not just dry headlines on a screen. The host chats about what people are saying about each story, from quoting other news sources to reading popular tweets and providing various opinions. And as you know, because you're listening to this show, it's wonderful to get all the news sources and perspectives and information in one place in just minutes. So if you want even more tech news in your life than I can give you here, add Techmeme Ride Home to your daily podcast playlist and get all the tech news to know for free. Just search your podcast app for Ride Home and subscribe. Again, search Ride Home and listen to Techmeme Ride Home every weekday. Now, back to the news. What are the safest cars in 2019? The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has a list of 30. Consumer Reports says that's twice as many as last year, which likely means automakers are making safety even more of a priority. The top 30 were based on the agency's own crash tests. Subaru has the most vehicles on the list of 30, with 6 cars and SUVs. Of course, you can see the full list in today's show notes on thenewsworthy.com. Another tech company has plans to sell its stock on the public market in 2019. This time, it's Pinterest. The Wall Street Journal reports the site has more than 250 million monthly active users, and the latest valuation is at $12 billion. It seems to be a trend among tech companies right now. Remember, both Uber and Lyft have also said they have plans to go public early next year. Heads up, if you got a new 2018 iPad Pro, it could come slightly bent right out of the box. And Apple is saying, we know. The Verge reports it's a side effect of how the iPad Pro was manufactured. And Apple said it should not impact the product or get worse. In fact, Apple is not calling it a defect. But still, if yours is bent and you find it annoying, you should be able to return or exchange it, at least within 14 days of buying it. Snapchat is getting in on the challenges trend and trying to up its growth. The Lens Challenge lets you access a certain Snapchat lens and then create your own lip-syncing video with augmented reality effects. Mashable says it's pretty much copying another popular social media app, TikTok, which has launched various successful lip-syncing video challenges. Many have been posted to YouTube as well and gone viral. Well, that's it for the main news today, but it's now time for Thing to Know Thursday, where a different expert explains a different thing to know every Thursday after the news. And this week, we're talking about the good, positive news in 2018. What a concept, right? My guest today is a storyteller focused only on the good in the world. He's the host of the podcast Sounds Good and creator of The Good newspaper. He built an online community of more than 250,000 world changers. He's helped brands like Disney, Square, Southwest Airlines, and more tell meaningful stories with heart and has been featured in Fortune, The Washington Post, Mashable, and more. So here's my conversation with Branden Harvey, all about the inspiring stuff you may have missed in 2018. Branden, thank you so much for coming on The Newsworthy.
Erica, I'm so honored to be here. I'm a huge fan, so this is really exciting for me.
Thank you. I'm a fan of yours as well. So let's talk about the best good news of 2018. Let's start with the most popular that you've seen on some of your platforms.
Okay, so I was going through all of our platforms looking at what was most clicked on, what was most shared, and I actually came out with a list of our top 10 and noticed that within those top 10, most of those stories were stories of people coming together to solve problems for people. And so if you don't mind, I would love to share 5 stories that I thought were really, really exciting and beautiful.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Okay. Number 1, Muslim Americans across the United States raised more than $200,000 for those affected by the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. It's really cool to see the Muslim community showing up for the Jewish community in this time of crisis earlier this year. Number 2, do you remember this man that was dubbed Spider-Man in France? He was this migrant who basically he climbed up this wall to save this dangling child from a balcony. He was actually hailed as a hero. He was given citizenship in France by the president of France, and then he was offered a job working for the Paris Fire Brigade. And the most clicked story that we had this year was actually when he started his first day, and he began his job working for the Paris Fire Brigade, putting his amazing skills to use. Number 3, okay, so just recently during the wildfires in Paradise, California, there was a girls volleyball team and they and their families lost everything in the fires, and that included their uniforms and their equipment, but they still showed up at their tournament anyway. And when they arrived at their volleyball tournament that weekend, they were really warmly greeted by a donation of new uniforms and new equipment. And get this, the donation was from their rivals. It was from their opponents. I think that it's so beautiful to see, these high schoolers coming together in this way to love their neighbors quite literally through this tragedy. Number 4, in Seal Beach, California, there's a man named John Chan, and he and his wife have owned a donut shop for 30 years. And recently, John's wife was put into the hospital, and he wanted to be able to spend more time with her there. And a member of the community, somebody who frequented this donut shop, found out about this story and decided to buy up all of the donuts in his shop so that he would have the money to support her treatment, but also so that he could close up shop early and visit his wife in the hospital. And then word got around the community, and now the entire community is joining together, and they've been buying out all of his donuts the moment he opens the door in the morning, and they've been giving them away. They've been sharing them with their community, but most of all, they've been providing him the opportunity to go and support his wife, be there present in the hospital. And I love seeing the community come together like that. And number 5, lastly, this was a really, really cool story. An artist put together a giant picnic at the United States and Mexico border that brought people together from both sides, from both countries, to share a meal on each side of the border fence. And in this time where, that feels like there's a lot of division between Mexico and the United States, it's beautiful to just kind of see this very human approach to sharing a meal with your neighbors.
I love all of these. And I think they let people know that, yes, there are good people out there, but also you don't have to feel helpless when tragedy hits. So I know this is going to be hard because you look at a lot of really positive stories and everyone is amazing. But what would you say is your favorite good news story of 2018?
Man, yeah, this is super tricky because I spend my day, all day and every day, looking at people who are creating solutions to problems in the world. But something that just, it gets me out of bed in the morning is the share of the world population living in extreme poverty has decreased this year. And if you zoom out, you'll see that it has continually fallen significantly since 1987. And so this is really, really cool for me because with all of the organizations I've spent time with around the world and all the organizations I see doing work today, I see how they're all playing a part in this. And it's just encouraging to know that when governments and nonprofit organizations and the private sector and individuals all work together, that this is what happens. The number of people living in extreme poverty continues to decrease. And even more beautiful, seeing this much progress, it doesn't make me, and I don't think it makes our community feel complacent. I think that it ultimately makes us feel more hungry and excited to invest even further into this and ultimately create an end to extreme poverty once and for all.
Yes, and I think it's so great that you highlight reports that show positive progress like that. So I would love to hear your process to find good news and what you recommend to others who want even more good in their lives.
Yeah, great question. So my background is in the world of humanitarian photography. And so I was fortunate enough to get to spend a lot of time with organizations around the world working to create solutions to the world's greatest problems. And so I came back, and a lot of what I do is I spend my time getting to know what nonprofits are doing on the ground, whether it's just, getting in touch with them as, a journalist or reporter, or just following along with their blogs or their Twitter accounts or their Instagram accounts. And I think that's a really exciting thing that a lot of people can do is if you've got an issue you care about, find some organizations who are doing work in that world of things, and just follow them online. And it's fun, but also informative and leaves you feeling more hopeful because you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that this was a potential solution to this problem or that people were making a difference here. And the other thing that I would say is that I actually think that there's a lot more good news that we see and read every day than we remember. Our brains have this natural negativity bias that naturally holds on to the bad experiences that we have every day. You can just think about the last time that you got a negative comment on Facebook or something. that stuck with you far more than all the positive things you saw on Facebook that day. And so one thing that I also recommend is anytime that you see something good in the world, jot it down really quick. It'll help your brain remember it. Whether or not you look back at that note in your phone or in a notebook later, the fact that you just took a moment to process it through writing is actually scientifically proven to help you retain that good news for a little bit longer than you normally would.
And be sure to check out all the good news Branden and his company offer at goodgoodgood.co or follow them online at goodgoodgood.co. They offer good news on social media, the printed newspaper, and the podcast called Sounds Good. Of course, I've linked to it all in today's show notes, along with all the other stories we talked about in this episode. So just go to thenewsworthy.com, click episodes, and find today's date. Thank you so much for listening today. The Newsworthy is ready for you by 4 in the morning every weekday, so we'll chat again tomorrow. Have a great day.